Get out! This house is ours now! Richard's voice boomed through the hallway of what had been my home for 35 years. My hands trembled as I clutched my hastily packed suitcase. The weight of it, nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I looked into the faces of my children, Jennifer and Michael, standing behind their father, their expressions a mixture of defiance and something else. Was it guilt? Shame? It didn't matter. They had chosen their side. You have 30 minutes to collect whatever else you need, Eleanor, Richard continued, checking his Rolex, the one I'd given him on our 25th anniversary. Anything left behind becomes our property. 3 months after our divorce was finalized, and this was how it ended. 35 years of marriage, of cooking meals, of kissing scraped knees, of planning birthday parties, of building a life, all dismissed with the cruel efficiency of someone discarding an outdated appliance. You can't do this, I whispered, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. This is my home too. Jennifer stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand resting on her father's shoulder. At 32, she had grown to mirror Richard in more ways than one, ambitious, calculating, pragmatic to a fault. Mom, it's all legal. The house was put in Dad's name years ago, remember? You signed the papers. Her tone was that of someone explaining something simple to a child. The judge already ruled on this. We're just expediting the transition. Michael, my sweet boy who once couldn't sleep without my bedtime stories, couldn't even look me in the eye. At 29, he had always been the peacemaker, always caught between his sister's sharp edges and his father's domineering presence. Michael? I reached out toward him, but he stepped back. It's better this way, Mom, he mumbled. Clean break and all, 30 minutes. How do you pack 35 years into 30 minutes? I moved through the house in a daze, grabbing photos, my mother's pearls, the quilt my grandmother had made. Each room held memories that couldn't be packed away. The kitchen where I'd taught Jennifer to bake cookies, the living room where Michael had taken his first steps, the garden I had nurtured from bare soil. When I returned to the foyer, Richard was waiting with the front door open, as if he couldn't bear to have me in his house a moment longer than necessary. Your time's up, Eleanor. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, though I already knew he didn't care. That's not our problem anymore, Jennifer replied, her voice clinically detached. You should have thought about that before the divorce. As I stepped over the threshold, Richard placed something cold and metallic in my palm. My house key, the one I'd used every day for over 3 decades. You won't be needing this anymore, he said with finality. The door closed behind me with a decisive click. I stood on the porch of what had been my home, surrounded by 3 suitcases and a cardboard box, the sum total of what remained of my life with them. Through the window, I could see them hugging, celebrating their victory. They thought they had won. They thought they had taken everything. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that I had been preparing for this moment for years. And the surprise I had in store for Richard Mitchell and our ungrateful children would change everything. I pulled out my phone and made the call I'd been saving for exactly this scenario. Sarah, it's Eleanor. It's time. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. I sat in Sarah's cozy living room, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. My oldest friend had taken me in without hesitation, her spare bedroom already prepared, as if she'd been expecting this day to come. I told you years ago he was planning something like this, Sarah said, her voice gentle but tinged with the righteous anger of someone who'd watched a friend suffer too long. Richard always played the long game. I just never thought the children would side with him, I whispered, the betrayal still fresh and raw. Where did I go wrong with them, Sarah? Sarah placed her hand over mine. You didn't. Richard did what he always does. He manipulated them. Jennifer has always wanted his approval, and Michael has always followed the path of least resistance. I nodded, remembering how Richard had slowly isolated me from financial decisions over the decades. First it was, don't worry your pretty head about it. Then, I've got it under control. Until eventually, I had no idea what we owned or owed. Did you bring it? Sarah asked, nodding toward my purse. I pulled out a small, weathered notebook. My insurance policy started 10 years ago when I first suspected Richard was having affairs. It contained dates, times, account numbers, overheard phone conversations, and photographs of documents I'd secretly copied. Everything's here, I confirmed. Every transaction, every offshore account, every client he's defrauded. Sarah's eyes widened. Eleanor Mitchell, you cunning woman. I never would have thought you had it in you. A small smile crossed my face. Neither would Richard. That was his mistake. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Mom, We need Dad's vintage cufflinks for a business dinner. Where did you hide them? The audacity stole my breath. Not even a word about where I was or if I was okay. Don't answer, Sarah advised. They've made their choice. I set the phone down. Tomorrow we call Robert. Robert Williams had been Richard's biggest rival in the investment business for decades. He was also the man who had warned me at a Christmas party 7 years ago that my husband was playing with fire. At the time, I dismissed it as professional jealousy. Now, I understood it had been a warning. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? Sarah asked. Once you start this, there's no turning back. I thought of the look on Richard's face as he closed the door on 35 years of marriage. I thought of Jennifer's cold dismissal and Michael's inability to meet my eyes. They think they've taken everything from me, I said, my voice growing stronger. But they have no idea what I'm about to take from them. As I drifted off to sleep that night in Sarah's guest room, surrounded by unfamiliar shadows, I realized something. For the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid of Richard Mitchell anymore, and that made me dangerous. Robert Williams's office overlooked Central Park, the expansive greenery a stark contrast to the steel and glass fortress of Williams Investment Group. At 65, Robert still commanded attention, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. Eleanor, he said, rising from behind his desk as Sarah and I were shown in. I've been expecting your call for years. You have? I asked, surprised. He gestured for us to sit. Richard Mitchell has made a career of cutting corners and burning bridges. The only surprise is that you stayed as long as you did. I placed my notebook on his desk. I brought everything. Robert's eyebrows rose as he flipped through the pages. My God, Eleanor, this is comprehensive. I had a lot of sleepless nights, I said simply. For the next hour, we went through my evidence. The shell companies Richard had created to hide assets from clients, the forged signatures, the falsified returns, the money laundering for certain special clients whose names never appeared in official records. This is enough to bury him, Robert said finally, looking up from the notebook. But are you prepared for the fallout? Your children are implicated in some of these transactions. My heart constricted. Jennifer is. Michael, I don't think he knows. He's the CFO, Eleanor, Robert said gently. Even if he didn't actively participate, he signed off on these statements. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My son, my sweet, conflict-avoiding son, could face criminal charges. I need time to think, I said, suddenly uncertain. Robert nodded. Take a day, but only a day. If what's in this notebook is accurate, a lot of people are losing money as we speak. As we left the building, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. Should I answer? I asked Sarah. Your call, she replied. With trembling fingers, I accepted. Michael? Mom. His voice sounded strained. Where are you? Dad's looking for some documents he says you took. So that was why he'd called. Not concern, but Richard's bidding. I'm safe, I said carefully. That's all you need to know. Mom, please. He lowered his voice. Things are tense here. Dad's worried about some audit. The fear in his voice gave me pause. Did he truly not know? Michael, I said slowly. What exactly did your father tell you about our divorce? The silence stretched between us, weighted with unspoken truths. He said you were trying to take the company, Michael finally answered. That you got greedy. I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. Is that what you believe? Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Michael, we need to talk. Not on the phone. Alone. No Jennifer, no Richard. I can't. You can. Tomorrow, noon, at Riverside Park. The bench where we used to feed the ducks when you were little. After a long moment, he whispered, okay. As I hung up, Sarah looked at me questioningly. Change of plans, I said. I need to give Michael a chance. But as we walked away from Robert's building, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next morning, Sarah's doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Jennifer standing in the hallway, immaculately dressed in a business suit despite the early hour. Don't answer it, Sarah whispered from behind me. I have to, I replied. She's still my daughter. When I opened the door, Jennifer didn't wait for an invitation. She strode in, surveying Sarah's apartment with thinly veiled disdain. So this is where you're hiding, she said. I'm not hiding, Jennifer. Your father threw me out, remember? She waved away my words as if they were irrelevant. I need those documents you took. What documents? Jennifer's perfectly composed face showed a flicker of irritation. Don't play dumb, Mom. It doesn't suit you. Dad says you've been collecting information for years, planning this. Planning what exactly? To destroy him. To destroy what we've built. She adjusted her designer watch, another gift from Richard, no doubt. I won't let you. The coldness in her voice chilled me. This wasn't the little girl who'd once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. This was Richard's protégé, molded in his image. What happened to you, Jennifer? I asked softly. Something flashed in her eyes. Pain, perhaps, or a memory of who she'd once been. But it vanished quickly. I grew up. I learned how the world really works. She stepped closer. Whatever you're planning, stop now. You don't want to go to war with Dad. You'll lose everything. I already have, I replied. Jennifer's expression hardened. Not yet, you haven't. This is just a taste. Dad knows you met with Robert Williams yesterday. He has friends everywhere, Mom. Eyes everywhere. My blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. For old time's sake. She reached into her purse and placed an envelope on Sarah's coffee table. Sign these papers. They're a formal relinquishment of any claims to Dad's business or assets. Sign them, and this all goes away. And if I don't? Jennifer straightened her jacket. Then I can't protect you. Or Michael. Protect Michael? From what? From what's coming. She moved toward the door. You have until midnight. After that, Dad releases the evidence. Evidence of what? I demanded. Tax fraud, with your signature all over it. After she left, Sarah emerged from the kitchen where she'd been listening. He's framing you, she said. I nodded, opening the envelope with shaking hands. The documents inside were comprehensive, a complete surrender of any claims I might have on Richard's assets. I need to warn Michael, I said, reaching for my phone. But Michael wasn't answering, and as noon approached, I faced a terrible choice. Sign away my future, or risk walking into a trap at Riverside Park. Sarah handed me her pepper spray. Whatever you decide, be careful. Richard is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. As I stepped outside, dark clouds gathered overhead, promising a storm, both literally and figuratively. What I didn't know then was that someone else had heard every word of my conversation with Jennifer. Someone who would change everything. Riverside Park was quieter than usual, the impending storm keeping most visitors away. I sat on our bench, the one where Michael had fed ducks as a toddler, his laughter bubbling up like sunshine, and waited, the envelope heavy in my purse. At 12:15, I was still alone. At 12:30, I began to worry. By 12:45, I accepted the truth. Michael wasn't coming. As I stood to leave, a voice called out behind me. Mrs. Mitchell? A young woman approached, early 20s, with a messenger bag slung across her body. Her nervous energy was palpable. Yes, I replied cautiously. My name is Olivia Torres. I worked as Michael's assistant at Mitchell Investments. She glanced around anxiously. He sent me to tell you he couldn't make it. He's being watched. By who? Richard? She nodded. And Jennifer. Michael asked me to give you this. She handed me a USB drive. He said it would explain everything. Is he in danger? The thought of my son trapped in Richard's web made my heart race. I think we all are, Olivia said quietly. Michael found something in the company accounts last week, something that scared him enough to make copies of all the records. She lowered her voice. Mrs. Mitchell, I overheard Jennifer on the phone yesterday. They're planning to pin everything on Michael if things go bad. The betrayal was breathtaking. Richard would sacrifice our son to save himself. Why are you helping us? I asked. Olivia hesitated. Michael was kind to me when others weren't, and she seemed to debate whether to continue. 2 years ago, my parents lost their retirement savings. They'd invested everything with Mitchell Investments. Your husband told them it was a market correction. Later, I found documents showing their money had been diverted to an account in the Caymans. My shame was immediate and overwhelming. How many lives had Richard destroyed while I looked the other way? I need to see what's on this drive, I said. Not here, Olivia warned. They might be watching. Michael said to tell you one more thing. Remember, the cabin. The cabin. Our family retreat in the Adirondacks, purchased in my name before we were married. The one property Richard couldn't touch during the divorce. Thank you, Olivia. You should leave town for a few days. She shook her head. I can't. My parents? Take them with you, I insisted, pressing some cash into her hand. Please. It's not safe. As she walked away, fat raindrops began to fall, the storm finally breaking. I hurried back to Sarah's apartment, the USB drive clutched tightly in my fist. Sarah was waiting with her laptop ready. Michael didn't show? No, but he sent a message. I inserted the drive with trembling hands. What we found inside turned my blood to ice. Years of fraudulent transactions, all meticulously documented. Clients' money siphoned into offshore accounts, falsified returns, tax evasion on a massive scale, and the most damning evidence of all, Documents with my forged signature, dating back years, implicating me in all of it. He's been planning this for a decade, I whispered, staring at the screen in horror, setting me up as the fall person if he ever got caught. Sarah's face was grim. Eleanor, these forgeries are good, but they won't stand up to forensic analysis. We need to get this to the authorities before Richard does. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mom, it's Michael, using Olivia's phone. Dad knows I copied the files. Jennifer told him, not safe here. Meeting you at the cabin tomorrow. Come alone. As I showed Sarah the message, the pieces finally clicked into place. The cabin, I said suddenly. That's where we need to go. Now. Why? What's at the cabin? I smiled for the first time in days. The one thing Richard never knew about. The drive to the Adirondacks was tense, each mile bringing us closer to what I hoped would be salvation, or at least vindication. Rain lashed against the windshield of Sarah's car, the wipers barely keeping up with the deluge. Are you going to tell me what we're looking for? Sarah asked, eyes fixed on the treacherous mountain road. When Richard and I bought the cabin, I insisted on a safe. He thought it was for jewelry. But it wasn't? I shook my head. It was for documents. Important ones. We arrived at dusk, the cabin a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. It had been years since my last visit, but the key still worked, the door swinging open with a familiar creak. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. The stone fireplace, the worn leather sofa, the kitchen where we'd prepared countless family meals. Before the ambition, before the affairs, before Richard became someone I no longer recognized. Where's this safe? Sarah asked, shaking rain from her coat. I moved to the main bedroom, kneeling beside the bed to pull up a floorboard that had always been loose. Beneath it, just as I'd left it, was a small floor safe. Richard never knew the combination, I explained, turning the dial with practiced ease. It's the date we met, the date we bought this cabin, and the dates the children were born. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside lay a manila envelope, untouched for over a decade. What is it? Sarah asked, leaning closer. With reverent care, I removed the contents, a deed, stock certificates, and a handwritten letter. When my father died, he left me an inheritance, I explained, spreading the documents on the bed. Richard never knew how much. I told him it was just a small sum, but it was actually quite substantial. Sarah's eyes widened as she examined the stock certificates. Eleanor, these are worth millions, I finished for her. I invested everything in blue-chip stocks, reinvested all the dividends, never touched a penny. All these years, Sarah whispered. You had this safety net and never used it? It wasn't for me, I said softly. It was for Jennifer and Michael, in case something happened to me, or in case Richard's house of cards collapsed, Sarah completed. I nodded. I never imagined I'd need it because he betrayed me. I thought it would be market forces or legal troubles that brought him down. As we catalogued the assets, the true extent of my secret fortune became clear. Enough to start over, enough to fight back, enough to ensure Richard couldn't destroy our children even as he tried to destroy me. A noise outside stopped our conversation cold, the sound of tires on gravel. Michael? Sarah suggested. I shook my head, a chill running down my spine. He said tomorrow. Carefully, I moved to the window and peered through the curtains. A familiar black Mercedes was parked beside Sarah's car, its headlights still on, illuminating the curtain of rain. It's Richard, I whispered, and he's not alone. Through the downpour, I could make out 3 figures approaching the cabin. Richard in his expensive coat, Jennifer close behind, and between them, Michael, his posture defeated, his hands appearing to be bound in front of him. Oh, God, Sarah gasped, looking over my shoulder. What have they done to him? I quickly gathered the documents, shoving them back into the safe. We need to hide these, now. What about Michael? They're forcing him here. My mind raced. There's a cellar entrance around back. If we can get out that way. The front door burst open with a crash of splintering wood. Richard Mitchell stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his face a mask of cold fury. Hello, Eleanor, he said, his voice eerily calm. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Behind him, Jennifer pushed Michael forward. In the dim light, I could see bruising on my son's face, his eyes wild with fear. I'm sorry, Mom, he choked out. They made me tell them. About the cabin, about the safe. Richard smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. You see, Eleanor, that's the problem with secrets. They always come out in the end. He stepped fully into the cabin, water pooling at his feet. Now, he continued, pulling a gun from his coat pocket, let's discuss those documents you've been hiding from me. The cabin seemed to shrink with Richard's presence, the walls closing in as he leveled the gun at me. Sarah stood frozen beside me, her breath coming in short, frightened gasps. "Richard," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "put the gun down. Whatever you think this will accomplish, it won't." His laugh was hollow. "Always the voice of reason, aren't you, Eleanor? Always the moral compass. How convenient that must have been while you were stealing from me." "Stealing?" I couldn't mask my incredulity. "That money was mine, my inheritance, which became mine when we married," he snapped. "Everything of yours became mine. That was the deal." Jennifer pushed Michael into a chair, her face set in grim determination. But there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. "Dad," she said quietly, "you didn't say anything about guns." Richard ignored her, his focus entirely on me. "Open the safe, Eleanor." "No." The word surprised even me with its strength. His finger tightened on the trigger. "I won't ask again." "If you shoot me, you'll never get the combination," I pointed out, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "And you'll have added murder to your list of crimes." Richard's face contorted with rage. "Crimes? Let me tell you about crimes, Eleanor. Your precious son here was embezzling from the company, siphoning funds to his own accounts." "That's a lie," Michael burst out, struggling against whatever bound his hands. "Mom, don't listen to him." Richard backhanded him with such force that Michael's chair toppled over. He crashed to the floor with a cry of pain that tore through my heart. "Stop it!" Sarah moved toward Michael, but Richard swung the gun toward her. "Stay where you are," he warned. Something shifted in the atmosphere then, a subtle change in the power dynamics. I saw Jennifer flinch at her father's violence, saw doubt flicker across her perfect features. "Jennifer," I said carefully, "you know this isn't right." "Shut up, Mom," she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Your father has been stealing from clients for years," I continued, my eyes locked on hers. "He's committed fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and now he's holding your brother at gunpoint. Is this really who you want to be?" "I said shut up," Jennifer's voice cracked. "You abandoned us. You gave up." "I filed for divorce," I corrected gently. "I never abandoned you. I never would have abandoned either of you." Richard's patience snapped. "Enough. Jennifer, find the safe. Now." As Jennifer hesitantly began searching the room, I caught Michael's eye from where he lay on the floor. A silent communication passed between us, a plan forming in the space of a heartbeat. "It's under the bed," I said finally. "I'll open it." Richard motioned with the gun, slowly. I knelt beside the bed, lifted the floorboard, and dialed the combination, aware of Richard hovering over me, his breath hot on my neck. The safe clicked open. "There," I said, stepping back. "Take it. Take everything. Just leave us alone." Richard holstered his gun to reach for the documents inside, his greed momentarily overriding his caution. In that instant, Michael surged upward from the floor, his bound hands swinging in an arc that connected with the back of Richard's knees. Richard stumbled, cursing. Sarah lunged for the gun. Jennifer screamed, and in the chaos, I made the split-second decision that would change everything. I grabbed the oil lamp from the bedside table and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered. Flames erupted, catching the dry wooden paneling. Smoke billowed through the cabin as the fire spread with frightening speed. "Run!" I screamed, pulling Sarah toward the back door. Michael scrambled to his feet, staggering toward us. "The documents!" Richard cried, still on his knees, reaching into the safe even as flames licked at his expensive coat. The last thing I saw as we fled into the rainy night was Jennifer, frozen in the doorway, torn between following us and helping her father. "Jennifer, come with us," I called desperately. Our eyes met across the growing inferno, mother and daughter, separated by more than just flames. And then she turned back toward Richard. We huddled in Sarah's car, soaked and shaking, watching the cabin burn. The rain had intensified, but it wasn't enough to douse the flames consuming my past. "Are they still in there?" Sarah whispered, her face ghostly in the dashboard lights. Michael, his hands now freed from the zip ties Jennifer had used, pressed his face against the window. "I don't see them." As if summoned by his words, two figures emerged from the blazing cabin. Richard, clutching a charred bundle of papers, and Jennifer, supporting him as he limped toward their Mercedes. "We need to go," I said urgently. "Now!" Sarah started the engine just as Richard spotted us. Even through the rain and darkness, I could see the murderous rage on his face. "He got the documents," Michael said, slumping in the back seat as we lurched down the muddy drive. "It's over." A strange calm settled over me. "No. It's not. Mom, you don't understand." Michael insisted. Those papers were everything, the proof of his crimes, your inheritance. Not everything, I interrupted. What he took were copies, outdated ones. Michael and Sarah stared at me in disbelief. The real documents are in a safe deposit box in Boston, I explained. Along with copies of everything on your USB drive, Michael. I made duplicates this morning before we left. For the first time in days, hope flickered in my son's battered face. You knew he'd come? I suspected. Your father was always predictable in his desperation. I turned to face him fully. Now tell me everything. Why did they bring you here? What does Richard really want? Michael's story poured out as Sarah navigated the treacherous mountain roads. How he'd discovered the extent of his father's crimes while preparing quarterly reports. How he'd confronted Richard, only to be told that I was the mastermind behind the fraud. How Jennifer had found him copying files and betrayed him to their father. He's planning to flee the country, Michael concluded. Tomorrow night, he has a private plane on standby and accounts set up in countries with no extradition treaties. And he's pinning everything on me, I said, the final piece clicking into place. Not just you anymore, Michael said grimly. Once I found those files, I became a liability too. Jennifer's the only one he trusts now. She looked uncertain back there, Sarah observed. When Richard hit you, I remembered the doubt in Jennifer's eyes, the hesitation. She's starting to see him for what he is. It's too late, Michael said bitterly. The FBI has been investigating Dad for months. An agent approached me last week asking questions. That's why I started digging deeper. When everything falls apart, Jennifer will go down with him. The thought of both my children in prison made my blood run cold. We need to get to Boston, get those documents. Then we go to the FBI ourselves. They'll never believe you over Richard, Michael warned. He has too many connections, too many people in his pocket. Maybe, I acknowledged, but there's someone who might tip the scales in our favor. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a number I hadn't called in years. Someone Richard fears more than anyone. Who? Sarah asked. His first wife. Michael's sharp intake of breath told me he understood the significance. Patricia Mitchell had vanished from Richard's life long before I entered it, her name forbidden in our household. All I knew were whispered rumors of a settlement that had nearly bankrupted Richard 30 years ago. As I pressed dial, lightning illuminated the road ahead, revealing a police roadblock, and Richard's Mercedes already pulled over, Richard himself gesturing wildly toward our approaching car. He's reporting us for arson, Sarah realized, slowing down. We can't stop, I said, the phone ringing in my ear. We have to get through. Sarah's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. How? As Patricia's voicemail message played in my ear, I made another split-second decision. Floor it, now. The motel room was sparse but clean, its anonymity our only protection. After evading the roadblock, Sarah's unexpected driving skills sending us bumping through a drainage ditch and onto a service road, we'd driven for hours, switching to Michael's credit card for the room once we were sure we weren't being followed. Patricia will call back, I assured Michael and Sarah, though the woman hadn't answered any of my 3 attempts to reach her. She has to. Michael paced the small room, his nervous energy palpable. Even if she does, what can she possibly tell us that would help now? Dad's probably told the police we kidnapped me, committed arson, maybe even tried to kill him. Patricia knows things about your father, I said. Things that even I don't know. My phone rang, startling us all. Unknown number. Eleanor Mitchell, I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. I never thought I'd hear from you. The voice was cultured, with a hint of a southern accent. Richard must have finally shown his true colors. Patricia? The one and only, though I haven't used that name in decades. There was rustling on the line, as if she was settling in for a long conversation. Tell me what that bastard has done now. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. The divorce, the eviction, Richard's fraud, the setup, the cabin, the gun. Patricia listened without interrupting. So he hasn't changed, she said when I finished. Still the same monster, just with new victims. I need your help, I told her. Whatever you know, whatever you have on him. I need it. Her laugh was brittle. Oh, honey, I have more than you can imagine. But it'll cost you. I have money, I said. My inheritance. I don't want your money, Patricia cut in. I want to watch him burn. I want to be there when it happens. Done. Then meet me tomorrow, noon, the Harborview Hotel in Boston, room 712. Come alone. After she hung up, I relayed the plan to Sarah and Michael. I don't like it, Sarah said immediately. It could be a trap. Richard could have gotten to her. It's not a trap, I assured her. The hatred in her voice when she mentioned Richard, that can't be faked. So what's the plan? Michael asked. We get these documents from Boston, meet with Patricia, then what? Then we go to the FBI, I said, together, with everything we have. And Jennifer? Michael's voice softened at his sister's name. The question hung in the air between us. Despite everything, Jennifer was still my daughter, still Michael's sister. We try to save her, I said finally, if she'll let us. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. It's Jennifer. We need to talk. Alone. I showed the message to the others. It's another trap, Sarah insisted. Maybe, I conceded. Or maybe she's finally seeing the truth. How would she even get your number? Michael asked. A cold realization washed over me. She wouldn't, unless... I never finished the sentence. The motel room door burst open, wood splintering around the lock. Men in dark suits flooded in, guns drawn. FBI, hands where we can see them. We froze, arms raised. A man in a tailored suit stepped through the chaos, his badge glinting in the early morning light. Eleanor Mitchell? He asked, though he clearly knew who I was. I'm Special Agent Carter. You're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. As they handcuffed me, I looked desperately at Michael. Get to Boston! Find Patricia! The last thing I saw as they led me away was Sarah grabbing Michael's arm, stopping him from interfering, and standing in the parking lot, watching with a mixture of triumph and regret, was my daughter Jennifer. The interrogation room was deliberately intimidating, windowless, sterile, with a camera recording my every move. I'd been there for hours, repeating my story to increasingly skeptical agents. Mrs. Mitchell, Special Agent Carter said, sliding photos across the table. These are documents with your signature on them, transfers authorizing the movement of client funds to offshore accounts. They're forgeries, I insisted for the dozenth time. My ex-husband set me up, that's what they all say. Carter's smile didn't reach his eyes. But here's what I find interesting. We've been building this case for months. Then suddenly, your son provides evidence implicating you as the mastermind. And now you're claiming it's all a frame job. Because it is. Richard is the criminal, not me. Carter leaned back, studying me. Your ex-husband is a respected financial advisor with powerful friends. You're a housewife with a grudge. Who do you think the jury will believe? The door opened, and another agent whispered something to Carter. His expression shifted. Seems you have a visitor, he said, gathering his files. Someone very insistent on seeing you. He left, and minutes later the door opened again. Jennifer stepped in, closing it behind her. I straightened. Emotions warring within me. Love, hurt, betrayal, hope. Jennifer. She looked different somehow, smaller, less certain. The perfectly polished corporate facade had cracked. Mom, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. I've only ever told you the truth, I said quietly. She placed a folder on the table between us. These documents. Dad says you created them to embezzle from the company, that you've been planning to destroy him for years. I didn't touch the folder. And you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. Jennifer's composure cracked entirely, tears spilling down her cheeks. Dad has evidence. Michael has evidence. You have evidence. Everyone has their version of the truth, and I can't tell which is real. Why are you here, Jennifer? I asked gently. What do you want from me? She wiped her tears angrily. Last night after the cabin, Dad was different, frightening. He told me we needed to take care of Michael before he caused more problems. The way he said it, she shuddered. I think he meant permanently. Ice flooded my veins. Where is Michael now? I don't know. I helped the FBI find you, but Michael and Sarah weren't there when they made the arrest. Thank God for small mercies. Jennifer, listen to me. Your father is desperate. He's planning to flee the country tonight, and he's setting me up to take the fall for his crimes. He said the same about you, she countered. Then look at the evidence objectively, I urged. Those signatures, compare them to ones you know are genuinely mine. The timing of the transfers, the accounts they went to. Follow the money, Jennifer. She hesitated. Even if what you're saying is true, it's too late. The FBI has their case. Dad's lawyers are the best in the business. It's never too late to choose the truth, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Help me, Jennifer. Help your brother. Something shifted in her eyes, resolution replacing doubt. What do you need me to do? Find Michael. Tell him to still meet Patricia, and I need you to get a message to Agent Carter. Tell him to check account number 8947302 at First Maritime Bank. It's where Richard keeps his contingency fund. Jennifer stood, her decision made. I'll do it. But Mom, if you're lying to me, I'm not, I promised. I never have. After she left, I sagged in my chair, exhaustion overwhelming me. Had I reached her? Had I truly changed her mind? Or was this another of Richard's manipulations? The door opened again, admitting Agent Carter with a strange expression on his face. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said formally, "you're free to go." I blinked in confusion. "What?" "New evidence has come to light," he said cryptically. "Evidence that corroborates parts of your story." "What evidence? Who brought it?" Carter's poker face slipped, revealing genuine astonishment. "Your ex-husband's first wife, Patricia Lawson. She's waiting outside with documentation going back 30 years. As I collected my belongings in a daze, one thought burned in my mind. Patricia had come to me, not waited for our meeting. But why? The answer waited in the lobby. Patricia Lawson, elegant in her 60s, standing beside a man I recognized immediately, Robert Williams. "Eleanor," Robert greeted me grimly, "we have a problem. Richard has Michael." "What do you mean Richard has Michael?" The FBI office seemed to spin around me. "How is that possible?" Patricia Lawson, still beautiful at 67, her silver hair elegantly styled, took my arm, steadying me. "Let's not discuss this here. My car is waiting." In the back of Patricia's limousine, with Robert beside me and Patricia opposite, the full story emerged. After my arrest, Michael had insisted on continuing to Boston alone, sending Sarah to contact Robert for help. But Michael never made it to the safe deposit box. Richard's men had intercepted him on the highway. "How do you know this?" I demanded. "Because Richard called me," Patricia said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her purse. "After all these years, the bastard called me directly. He wants to make a trade." "Michael, for what?" "For this." Patricia withdrew a small leather journal from her purse. "My record of every illegal transaction Richard conducted during our marriage. The original template for all his later schemes. And for you," Robert added quietly, "he wants you both to tie up loose ends before he leaves the country." The implication was clear. Richard had no intention of letting any of us survive this encounter. "Where's Sarah now?" I asked. "Safe," Robert assured me. "At my office, with security." "And Jennifer?" Patricia's expression softened slightly. "She's the one who told us about Michael. She's been working with the FBI since this morning, providing access to Mitchell Investments' internal servers." My daughter had chosen the right side after all. Relief washed through me, followed immediately by renewed fear for Michael. "What's the plan?" I asked. Patricia and Robert exchanged glances. "Richard has demanded a meeting," Patricia explained. "Tonight at 8 p.m., the old Mitchell Investments warehouse by the harbor. He'll bring Michael. We bring the journal and you." "It's a trap," I said immediately. "Of course it is," Patricia agreed, her southern accent more pronounced with her anger. "Richard doesn't plan on any of us walking out of that warehouse alive, but he doesn't know that we've been planning for this day for 30 years. "We?" I looked between them. Robert's expression was grim. "Patricia and I have been partners in more ways than one since shortly after her divorce. We've been gathering evidence against Richard for decades. Why wait so long?" I couldn't help asking. Patricia's smile was cold. "We needed him to build his empire before we tore it down. The higher he climbed, the harder the fall. And we needed to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else when he went down." "Like you," Robert added softly. "And your children." The realization was staggering. "You've been watching us? All these years?" "Protecting you as much as we could," Patricia corrected. "But Richard was careful around you. He learned from his mistakes with me." The limousine pulled up to a towering glass building, Robert's corporate headquarters. "We have 6 hours until the meeting," Robert said, checking his watch. 6 hours to prepare for every contingency." "And the FBI?" I asked. "Agent Carter?" "We'll be there, but not visibly," Patricia assured me. "Richard has too many friends in law enforcement. We can't risk tipping him off." As we rode the private elevator to Robert's penthouse office, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Why help me? Why now?" Patricia's eyes met mine. Decades of shared pain passing between us. Two women who had loved and been destroyed by the same man. "Because you're the only other person who truly understands what he is," she said simply. "And because I made a promise to myself that Richard Mitchell would never destroy another family." In Robert's office, we found not only Sarah waiting, but Jennifer as well, surrounded by laptops and documents. "Mom!" Jennifer rushed to embrace me, all corporate coolness gone. "I'm so sorry for everything." Over her shoulder, I met Sarah's tearful gaze. My oldest friend nodded once. Jennifer's conversion was genuine. "We're going to get Michael back," I promised, holding my daughter tight. "And then we're going to make your father pay for what he's done to all of us." Patricia cleared her throat. "The clock is ticking. Richard's plane is scheduled to depart at 10 p.m. If we're going to save Michael and stop Richard once and for all, we need to move fast. On the wall behind her, a large screen displayed satellite images of the warehouse, while another showed a blinking dot, Michael's phone, moving along the harbor road. "It's time," Robert announced, opening a briefcase to reveal what looked like communications equipment. "Eleanor, are you ready to face Richard one last time?" I thought of my son in Richard's clutches, of the decades of manipulation and abuse, of the lives Richard had ruined in his quest for wealth and power. "I've been ready for 35 years, I said, a calm certainty settling over me. "Let's finish this." As our unlikely alliance prepared for battle, I realized that Richard had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he was dealing with a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. He had no idea he was facing a mother determined to save her children. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its windows dark and broken like missing teeth. I stood beside Patricia at the entrance, the weight of Robert's hidden microphone heavy against my collarbone. "Remember," Patricia whispered, "keep him talking. The FBI needs time to get into position." I nodded, clutching the leather journal that had become our bargaining chip. "What if he's already hurt Michael?" Patricia's eyes, so like Jennifer's in shape if not in color, hardened. "Then Richard will learn what true vengeance is." The warehouse door creaked open at our approach. Inside, emergency lights cast eerie shadows across rusting machinery and abandoned crates. And at the center, like a stage set for the final act of a tragedy, stood Richard Mitchell. "Right on time," he called, his voice echoing. I've always appreciated punctuality in my wives. Beside him, bound to a chair, was Michael. His face was bruised, his eyes desperate but alive. The relief nearly buckled my knees. "Let him go, Richard," I demanded, stepping forward. "You have what you want. Me, the journal. Just let our son go." Richard's laugh was cold. "Our son? That's touching, Eleanor. Suddenly remembering your maternal instincts." "I never forgot them," I replied, moving closer. "Unlike you, who's willing to sacrifice your children to save yourself?" His expression darkened. "Careful, Eleanor. You're not in a position to moralize. And you're not in a position to run anymore," Patricia interjected, her southern drawl more pronounced with her anger. "It's over, Richard." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Richard's face. "Patricia, you look, well, for someone who should be dead." "Disappointed?" she asked sweetly. "I've survived everything you've thrown at me." "We both have." She gestured to me. "Did you really think we wouldn't find each other eventually?" Richard's hand moved to his jacket pocket, where I knew he kept his gun. "A touching reunion. But I'm afraid this conversation has reached its conclusion." He withdrew the weapon, pointing it at Michael. "The journal, now, or our son becomes an only child." I stepped forward, extending the journal. "Take it. Just don't hurt him." As Richard reached for the journal with his free hand, I locked eyes with Michael. A silent communication passed between us, a mother and son, united in purpose. In that moment, everything happened at once. Michael kicked out, his chair toppling sideways. Patricia threw something, a pen, with startling accuracy, striking Richard's gun hand. I lunged forward, driving my shoulder into Richard's chest. The gun discharged, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but adrenaline kept me moving. Richard and I crashed to the floor, the journal scattering across the concrete. "FBI, freeze!" Agent Carter's voice boomed through the warehouse as agents flooded in from every entrance. Richard's face, inches from mine, contorted with hatred. "You ruined everything," he hissed. I met his gaze without flinching. "No, Richard, you did that yourself." As agents pulled Richard away, Jennifer rushed to Michael, freeing him from his restraints. Sarah and Robert appeared from where they'd been monitoring everything, relief evident on their faces. "Mom, you're bleeding," Jennifer cried, noticing my shoulder for the first time. "It's nothing," I assured her, though the pain was intensifying. "Just a graze." As paramedics tended to my wound, I watched Richard being led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. The man who had once seemed so powerful now looked small, diminished. "He'll try to make a deal," Patricia noted, joining me on the ambulance's tailgate. "Offer up names of clients involved in his schemes." "Let him," I said wearily. "Justice is justice, no matter how it comes." Michael and Jennifer approached, both looking exhausted but somehow lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. "What happens now?" Michael asked, taking my hand. I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw not the bitter adults who had thrown me out of my home, but the vulnerable, confused people they'd become under their father's influence. "Now we heal," I said simply, "together." 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my new home, smaller than the old one, but truly mine. The criminal trials were ongoing, but Richard's financial empire had collapsed completely. The money I'd secretly saved had been enough to start over, enough to help Michael and Jennifer start over too. Sarah sat beside me on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine between us. "Did you ever imagine it would end this way?" she asked. I thought of the frightened woman I'd been, standing on another porch with 3 suitcases and a broken heart. "No," I admitted. "I thought I'd lost everything." "Instead, you found yourself," Sarah observed. Inside, I could hear Jennifer and Michael laughing as they prepared dinner. Patricia and Robert would be joining us later, our unlikely family, forged in fire. "You know what the biggest surprise was?" I said, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Not that I was strong enough to fight back. Not that we won." "Then what?" I smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lifting. That losing everything I thought I needed was actually the beginning of everything I truly wanted. As my children called us into dinner, I realized that Richard's final cruel act, throwing me out of my home, had actually been my first step toward freedom. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. She sat me by the kitchen. That's where I watched my son get married. Through a swinging door behind a tray of shrimp cocktail. I paid for the wedding, every flower, every chair. But when the music started and the toasts began, I wasn't part of it, not even close. I smiled, stayed quiet, and after the last bite of cake, I burned it all to the ground with one phone call. Subscribe if this story finds you, and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? There was no sign, no card, no nameplate, no warm greeting. Just a folding chair with a paper napkin tossed over the seat. That was my place, between a stack of used trays and a wheeled cart with a broken wheel that squeaked every time someone pushed it. I stood there for a few seconds, blinking hard. The scent of marinara hung in the air, thick and sour, clinging to the steam from the kitchen doors. I felt the heat from the ovens against my back, and something inside me twisted. I looked down at my dress, soft mauve chiffon, hand-stitched. I had spent 3 hours getting my hair done that morning. 3 hours pretending this day would be as special for me as it was for them. But no one had told me. No one said, "We've made other seating arrangements." No one even looked at me when I arrived. Not even Daniel. He was too busy, smiling wide, adjusting his cufflinks, letting her mother kiss him on the cheek like she'd raised him. Like she was the one who stayed up every night when he had night terrors. Like she was the one who took double shifts when he needed braces and I couldn't afford both rent and his smile. I clutched my little handbag, beige leather, the one he bought me years ago for Mother's Day when he still called me Mama. My hands were shaking. I could feel it in my wrists, a subtle vibration like something electrical trying to escape through my fingertips. The catering manager, a boy who couldn't be more than, smiled awkwardly. They said you were supposed to wait back here, ma'am. The bride didn't want, any visual clashes with the theme?" I stared at him. "Theme?" He winced, glancing at the swinging doors. The silver edge hit the wall again with a sharp bang. Laughter spilled in from the reception hall, followed by a burst of music. Like aesthetic consistency, with the photos and all. I sat down slowly. The chair creaked. There was a dark stain on the floor under my feet. Gravy, maybe. My shoes stuck slightly when I shifted them. I looked at my nails, freshly done in a soft pink, then at the cold chicken breast someone had dropped in front of me on a chipped white plate. The worst part? I didn't say anything, not one word, because it was his day, because I told myself, don't ruin this for him, don't be that mother, because I had paid for it all and still believed that meant something. I pulled out the program I'd been handed at the church, elegant cursive on cream cardstock, no mention of me anywhere. Her father walked her down the aisle. Her mother gave the first speech. I was just the purse string, the ghost in the kitchen, the woman no one wanted in the picture. The door swung again. I caught a glimpse of the chandelier, the band starting up, the first dance, Daniel and Emily twirling under soft gold light. He didn't look my way once. I pressed my napkin to my mouth, pretending to dab a non-existent stain. My eyes burned. I told myself it was the onions from the kitchen, the steam, the heat. Not the betrayal, but it was. God, it was. And somewhere deep inside me, Something cracked, quietly. Like a hairline fracture in glass you don't notice until the whole pane shatters. I stared at the wall in front of me. There was a patch of peeling paint behind a fire extinguisher. I stared at it so hard, I thought I'd burn a hole through it. That spot became my anchor, my focal point, the only thing keeping me from falling apart in front of a waiter carrying crab puffs. Because if I let it out, if I started crying, I didn't know if I'd ever stop. I took a deep breath, then another. The chicken on my plate had gone cold. I didn't touch it. Eventually, someone brought out dessert. I didn't taste it, just stared at the layers of white and gold, her colors, her perfect little vision. And then I made the call. It was short, direct. I didn't need to explain myself. Just 3 simple cancellations: the flowers for tomorrow's brunch, the second half of the band's payment, and the open bar that was supposed to last until midnight. My voice was steady, calm, controlled. And when I hung up, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't known in years. Power. I looked down at my hands again, no longer shaking. My heart, no longer racing. Just a quiet hum, like an engine coming back to life. The door swung again. Another flash of light, of laughter, of the life I was excluded from. Let them toast without me. I had my own plans now. I didn't sleep that night. Not for a second. I lay in that stiff hotel bed, still in my dress, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me like it might suddenly unscrew and crash onto my chest. I half hoped it would. I could still smell the kitchen grease in my hair. The perfume of expensive roses mingled with the sour scent of my own sweat. Humiliation clinging to my skin like a second layer. At some point I kicked off my shoes. My feet were swollen. They'd hurt during the whole reception, but I hadn't dared take them off. I needed to look presentable, even in the kitchen. It was around a.m. when I sat up. The digital clock glowed red. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand. I didn't check it. I already knew what was there. Missed calls from Daniel, from Emily. A message from my niece that just said, "What happened? Everyone's freaking out." I opened the wedding budget spreadsheet on my tablet. I'd been keeping it meticulously for over a year. I knew every cent, every adjustment, every upgrade, every indulgence Emily asked for, always with a tight smile and that word she used like a knife wrapped in satin: elevated. Margaret, we just want something a little more elevated. That's how I ended up agreeing to hand-calligraphed invitations from some boutique Etsy vendor in Vermont. That's how the venue changed from the community church hall to a restored barn with chandeliers and antique whiskey barrels. That's how the open bar added a custom cocktail menu, and the cake went from 2 tiers to 5. I paid for it all. No one offered to split the cost. Not Daniel, not her parents. And I never asked, because I wanted him to have everything I couldn't afford when I was raising him. I scrolled through the transactions. My breath caught when I saw them. 2 unauthorized charges made just days before the wedding. Bar tab from a tasting event. Dress rehearsal dinner upgrade. Same restaurant where they sat me in the back near the kitchen again. My stomach clenched. I double-checked the card. My card. Used without permission. And then I saw the note she left on Venmo to one of her bridesmaids. His mom is covering everything. Might as well go big. Wedding vibes. I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt nothing. That strange, heavy nothing that comes after too much pain. Like my insides had gone numb, like my nerve endings had curled inward to protect themselves. I reached over and turned on the lamp. The light stung my eyes. I went to the mirror above the dresser. My reflection startled me. There was mascara smudged beneath my eyes. The soft lines of my mouth had hardened into something unfamiliar. My hair was flat, one side crushed from the pillow. I looked like someone who had aged 10 years in one night. But then, something shifted. I smoothed my hair back, washed my face, sat down at the desk, and opened my email. I drafted 3 messages. 1 to the florist: "Please cancel Sunday delivery. The payment balance is withheld. Thank you." 1 to the band: "Due to changes in the event schedule, we will not require the second performance. Please consider the matter closed." 1 to the bar vendor: "We're scaling back post-reception services. Please cancel the second shift. Do not process the remaining balance." All were polite, all professional, but final. It was almost dawn when I hit send, and when the sky outside turned from black to bruised blue, I closed my tablet, sat on the bed, listened to the quiet hum of the air conditioning, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I was done. Done being convenient. Done being the wallet. Done being the afterthought. Let them figure it out. Let them scramble. Let them remember the moment the music cut off, the bar stopped pouring, the flowers never arrived, and wonder why. And maybe, just maybe, they'd remember who made that wedding possible in the first place. The woman in the kitchen. The one they didn't want in the photos. The music pulsed through the wall like a distant heartbeat. I sat there, in that folding chair, with a plate of cold hors d'oeuvres and a Diet Coke from the catering cooler, and tried not to listen, but I couldn't help it. Every laugh, every cheer, every clinking glass, it all made its way back through the swinging door, like a cruel reminder of where I wasn't. I could hear someone making a toast, male voice, probably her father, or maybe Daniel's best man. I leaned back slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse through the crack of the door. There they were, lined up in front of that ridiculous floral arch I paid $10 for. Gold chairs, floating candles, custom neon sign that read, "The future is forever," in loopy cursive. I recognized the voices even when I couldn't see the faces. Emily's mother, Susan, with her signature fake sympathy tone. "Oh my God, Daniel, you are just the sweetest man alive. Emily is so lucky." Then laughter, cheers. I froze. There, sitting at the head table, was Susan, draped in navy chiffon, dripping in pearls like she was born into old money, which she wasn't. She had met me only 3 times before the wedding. Never asked about my life, never thanked me for the payments, never even offered to contribute a penny. Next to her, Emily's father, holding court like a suburban king. Big, booming laugh. Same man who told me at the rehearsal dinner, "We really admire your perseverance, raising Daniel on your own and all. Must have been hard. Perseverance. As if I'd hiked a mountain, not worked years in scrubs so my kid could have a life without hand-me-downs. And there was Daniel, my Daniel, smiling like a stranger, sitting between her parents like he'd always belonged to them. I searched for my own family. My sister, Carol, sat 2 rows back, next to our cousin, Diane. Neither of them looked toward the kitchen. No one did. I wasn't part of the show. I was a problem that had been solved by a chair in the back and a door that swung shut. Someone brushed past me. A waiter. Young girl, probably in college. She glanced at my plate and smiled, awkward and guilty. "Do you want, a refill or anything?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. God, I wasn't. Every inch of me ached, feet, shoulders, jaw clenched so tight it pulsed behind my eyes. My heart sat heavy in my chest, like a lump of something rotten that refused to move. I stared down at the plate. 3 olives, a slice of brie, a sad little triangle of toast. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I couldn't bring myself to put anything in my mouth. My stomach was a clenched fist, my throat a narrow pipe. I thought of the seating chart. I'd asked Emily gently, weeks ago, "Have you figured out where I'll be sitting?" She smiled, tight, bright. "We're still finalizing everything. Don't worry, Margaret, you'll be included." I should have known. I did know. Somewhere deep down, I knew I was being managed, moved around like a prop, invited for the checkbook, tolerated for the optics, but never truly wanted. The worst part? I said yes to everything. I let them chip away at my role, one tiny concession at a time. No speech from me, no mother-son dance, because they said it would feel awkward. No photos before the ceremony, no mention in the program, just a seat, in the kitchen. I heard Daniel laughing again, that deep, rumbling laugh he used to have as a kid when I'd chase him through the sprinkler in our backyard. The same laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. I felt something rise in my chest. Not grief, not disappointment. Rage, quiet, controlled, devastating rage. I stood up, walked toward the swinging door, placed my hand on the edge and pushed just slightly, just enough to peek through again. I locked eyes with Emily. She saw me. She knew where I was, knew what she had done, and she smiled, not apologetically, not nervously, but calmly, confidently, like it was natural, like I was exactly where I belonged. She turned back toward her bridesmaids, tossed her head back, and laughed. That was when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. They had planned it, chosen it. She didn't want me there, and Daniel had let her. They both had. And just like that, something inside me shifted. Not broken. No, not this time. Repositioned. My place in their lives had changed, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. Let them have their spotlight. Let them drink their champagne. They thought I was invisible. They had no idea what I could take away. The toast started while I was still standing by the kitchen door. Someone had dimmed the lights in the reception hall. I could see the glow of string lights above, and the shimmer of gold from the chargers on each table. The mic squealed once, and then her father's voice boomed through the room like a game show host. "To our daughter Emily and her perfect new husband Daniel." Cheers erupted. I took a step back. The kitchen behind me was chaotic, metal trays clanging, voices rising, a server arguing about Table 12's gluten-free plate. I moved to the side, leaned against the wall. The plaster was cold against my back. The smell of garlic and hot oil clung to the air. From the other side of the door, her father kept going. When Emily was little, she told us she wanted a fairy tale. A prince, a castle, and a happy ending. "Well, sweetheart, today, you got it." More applause. My breath caught. He was never there when Daniel was little. Never saw me mop vomit off the bathroom floor at AM. Never watched me sew buttons back onto his school uniform. Never drove miles on icy roads just to take him to a chess tournament. But today, they were rewriting the story, and I had been edited out. I looked down at my hands again. My fingers were blotchy, the skin thin, slightly trembling. The cold air vent above made my arms prickle. Then came Emily's mother's turn. Her voice was syrupy, over-rehearsed. "We're so grateful to be joined today by so many people who love Emily and Daniel, and to welcome Daniel into our family. He's like a second son to us already." Another cheer. Like a second son. Not a word about me. Not a word about the woman who raised him. "No, thank you for everything, Margaret. No, we appreciate your generosity. No, this day wouldn't be possible without her." Nothing. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. My feet ached, but I refused to sit. Then came the part I had been dreading, the groom's speech. Daniel stepped up to the mic. He looked radiant. Strong jaw, confident stance, tailored suit that I had helped pay for. I had seen him take his first breath in a NICU unit. Now he stood there, grown, glowing, a stranger. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered, polished, like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. "I feel so lucky. Emily, you've made me the happiest man alive. And to your family, thank you for welcoming me like your own. I truly feel at home with you all." My throat closed. "And to everyone who helped make today happen, thank you. This has been the most incredible day of our lives." My name was never said. Not once. I had paid the venue, the catering, the photographer, the DJ, the linens, the custom neon sign. I even paid for the dress Emily wore as she stood there with her hand on his arm. And yet, I didn't exist. The servers clapped. I didn't move. The band picked up again. The dance floor started to fill. Someone brought me a slice of cake on a plastic plate. I stared at it. Vanilla, with raspberry filling. Her favorite. I don't like raspberry. Never did. I looked at the thin gold fork they gave me. My hand was steady now. I remembered when Daniel turned 10 and asked for chocolate cake with sprinkles. I worked 2 extra shifts just to buy the one from the bakery he'd pointed to in the window. His eyes lit up when he saw it. He hugged me so tight that day. That boy was gone. In his place, a man who didn't even remember to save me a chair. I set the cake aside. I waited until the last bite of dessert was served, until people were getting up, loosening their ties, wiping icing from their lips, until the music hit that perfect peak. Then I walked out of the kitchen, straight past the servers, straight past the bar, out the side door. The air outside was cool and still, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. I took out my phone. 3 calls, 1 to the florist, 1 to the band, 1 to the bar manager, polite, direct, no need for explanations. By the time I walked back into the hotel, the wheels were already turning. Tomorrow's brunch? Cancelled. Late night music set? Pulled. Second bartender and cocktail menu? Gone. I had stayed quiet long enough. Let them enjoy what's left. Let them feel the gap, the absence. Let them ask questions. I didn't care if they called me dramatic, petty, ungrateful. They already erased me from the story. All I did was turn the page. The hotel room smelled like rose lotion and something faintly metallic. Maybe the stress, maybe my skin. I sat cross-legged on the bed, the comforter still perfectly made beneath me, untouched since I checked in 2 nights ago. I hadn't cried, not once, but something inside me had turned cold. Not frozen, no. Frozen things are brittle. They crack. I was hardening, tempered. The sun hadn't even come up yet. I reached for my purse and pulled out my phone. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a dozen messages. Daniel, where are you? Why is the brunch canceled? Mom, seriously, this isn't funny. Emily, I don't understand what's going on. Are you okay? Please respond. This is so childish. I laughed, quietly. Just a puff of air through my nose. Childish? I opened the banking app again. My fingers moved with the muscle memory of someone who had balanced a checkbook every Sunday for 3 decades. The charges were still there, unauthorized, arrogant. The bride, my new daughter-in-law, had helped herself to my card for a pre-wedding bar crawl and a spa day with her bridal party. I could see it all in the itemized receipts. Bottles of champagne, manicures, facial masks, brunch for 8. No one asked me. No one even told me. The trust I'd carried in my chest like an old quilt, warm, familiar, felt shredded, like someone had taken scissors to it while I slept. I clicked over to my emails. There were 2 new ones, one from the florist. We're disappointed by the sudden cancellation, but we understand. Per our agreement, no refunds for less than our notice. Fine. The second email was from the band's manager. We were halfway through setting up when the cancellation came in. It's extremely unusual, but your message was clear. We'll leave the deposit untouched. Also fine. I wasn't doing this for a refund. This was for me, for the invisible woman in the kitchen chair, for the mother erased from her own son's milestone. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since the day before. The idea of food made me nauseous. Instead, I got up, pulled the stiff curtains open, and watched the sun bleed into the sky. Orange, then pink, then a pale yellow that made everything look unreal. And then I remembered something. A little red file folder, stuffed away in the drawer of my dresser back home. Old paperwork, legal things, letters I never threw out. I felt pulled to it, like it had been whispering to me this whole time. I packed my things slowly, took a shower, washed off the perfume and the resentment, dried my hair, put on jeans and a button-down shirt that still smelled faintly like lavender detergent, checked out of the hotel without a word. The drive home was quiet, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the soft static of the radio playing songs I didn't know. The kind of drive where you start to hear your own thoughts, loud and unfiltered. He didn't mention you. They all saw where you were sitting. No one did anything. When I pulled into my driveway, the roses I had planted 2 summers ago were in full bloom. I didn't stop to admire them. I went straight to the bedroom, opened the dresser, pulled the red folder out, sat on the bed. At the bottom of the stack, beneath old insurance papers and a few photos I hadn't looked at in years, was a letter. The envelope was yellowed at the corners, postmarked from Arizona, a date written in my late husband's handwriting. The year he left. I remembered finding it weeks after he died. I hadn't opened it then. I couldn't. It had felt like salt in an open wound, like letting him speak from the grave when I wasn't ready to listen. But now, I slid my finger under the flap. The paper was thin, his handwriting slanted and familiar. It started simple. Margaret, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but I need to tell you something. I felt my pulse pick up. My hands trembled slightly. I've been carrying a secret, and I can't take it to the grave. You deserve the truth. Daniel, he isn't biologically yours. I found out years ago. Emily was pregnant when we got together. I thought I could pretend he was mine, but he's not, and neither of us ever told you. I stopped reading. The room spun just for a second, then settled. I read the rest. Apologies, excuses, regrets, words that meant nothing now. Daniel, my Daniel, was the product of an affair. Another woman's child, left on my doorstep like a test I didn't know I was taking, and I passed. God help me, I passed. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every night shift I took to buy him sneakers and class photos, I passed with flying colors. And yet, here I was, discarded, replaced, erased. But now, I had a new clarity, a truth sharp enough to cut through years of silence. And I was done bleeding. I didn't cry. Even as I sat there with that letter trembling in my lap, the weight of it heavier than anything I'd ever held, I didn't shed a single tear. What would be the point? Tears had built Daniel's childhood. Tears paid for his shoes, his asthma medication, his first car. They filled my pillow after his father left, and again when he walked across that high school stage, not once turning to wave at me in the crowd. I had run out of tears years ago. What I had now was something else. Not grief, not heartbreak. Clarity. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee. Black. Strong. I sat by the window and watched the neighbor's sprinkler tick-tick-tick across the lawn. It was a normal Sunday morning, but I was no longer the woman who paid for someone else's fairy tale and got a folding chair behind the punch bowl in return. I was no longer the woman who would swallow this. Not this. I opened my phone and began with the florist. My voice was calm, polite. I thanked them for their understanding, confirmed again that Sunday's arrangements would not be needed. I didn't explain. I didn't owe them that. The band was next. Same tone, same silence about the reason. Then the bar service. Hi, this is Margaret Langley. Yes, that's right. I'm calling to cancel the cocktail reception for the post-wedding brunch. Yes. No issues. Just a change of heart. Thank you. Click. 3 calls, 3 cuts. I could have left it there, but I didn't, because I knew what was coming. I turned off my phone, turned it back on 5 minutes later. 38 unread messages, 3 voicemails, Daniel again. Mom, where are you? The band didn't show. What the hell is going on? Emily's mother. I don't know what's happening, but this is incredibly unprofessional. People are asking questions. Then Emily herself. Margaret, seriously, is this because you were upset about the seating? That's just petty. We had a vision. Don't ruin this. Petty. The word echoed, like a slur, like a branding iron. And yet, when I closed my eyes, all I could see was her smirking across the reception hall, knowing where I was, knowing what she had done, knowing I wouldn't fight back. Until now. I turned off the phone again. Let them spiral. Let the questions pile up. Let them realize the bar ran dry because I was the well, that the music stopped because I paid the final note, that the flowers never arrived because the roots were rotten. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped the counters, fed the cat. It was the most peace I'd felt in months. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them knock. Let them sit in the heat of their own discomfort. Later that night, I posted a single photo on Facebook. Not of the wedding, not of me. Just a picture of the check I wrote, blurred out the account number, left the signature visible, no caption, no explanation, just that. A truth they couldn't deny, a receipt of sacrifice. And then I logged off, not just from Facebook, from the guilt, from the silence, from pretending this wasn't betrayal. I didn't need their explanations, their spin, their justifications. Let them sit in the wreckage. I wasn't going to save them from it. The silence was the first sign they were scrambling. No more messages, no more calls, just a strange, stretching quiet, like the eye of a storm passing directly over my house. I could feel it, the tension, the waiting. They didn't know what I would do next. I didn't either, but it was going to be mine. Monday morning, I brewed coffee and sat by the window again. No makeup, no earrings, just me and the day, and the hum of the fridge in the background. Daniel hadn't called since yesterday. The last voicemail had been short, stiff, defensive. You really made a scene, Mom. Everyone's talking. You embarrassed us. I don't know what you were trying to prove, but you crossed a line. I didn't even flinch when I heard it. Because here's the truth, no one likes to say aloud. You can give everything to someone. Your time, your money, your love, and still be disposable. You can build their entire world and still be told you're not part of the aesthetic. The betrayal didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was how little I cared now that I'd stopped begging for their approval. That morning, I deleted his contact from my phone. Just the name. The number remained. I didn't need to forget him. I just didn't want his name lighting up my screen like it still belonged there. Around noon, I went out. Grocery store, post office, small errands. Life continued. And in the bakery aisle of all places, I saw Diane, my cousin who'd flown in for the wedding. She smiled when she spotted me, but there was hesitation behind it. Margaret? Hey. I nodded. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. Are you okay? I met her eyes. Were you okay? I asked, watching me sit back there. She flushed. I didn't realize that was on purpose. I thought maybe you... No, I cut in gently. You didn't think. That's all? There was a long silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. It was wrong. I should have said something. I nodded once. Thank you. She looked relieved, like that small moment of accountability had freed her. It hadn't freed me, but it was a start. When I got home, I found a bouquet on my porch. Carnations, the cheap kind, already wilting. No card. I didn't bring them inside. Instead, I walked them straight to the trash bin. Later that evening, I checked Facebook. The photo of the check had nearly 100 comments. Old friends, colleagues, neighbors, people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were confused, some were outraged, but most understood. One comment stuck out. "This broke my heart, Margaret, and I've never related to something so deeply. Thank you for showing us we don't have to stay quiet." That was it. The beginning of something new. Not revenge, not spite, power. Reclaimed. Let them rage in group chats. Let them spin their own narrative. I wasn't replying. I wasn't explaining. I was finally choosing silence, not as submission, but as control. And the silence, this time, was mine. It started with the drawer. A creaky old thing in the guest room dresser, half stuck, always needing a little hip bump to open. I wasn't even looking for anything in particular, just clearing out the remnants of a life I'd been too tired to sort through. But somewhere between the yellowing tax returns and expired coupons, I found it. That red folder again. The same one I thought I'd already emptied. But tucked into the sleeve, so thin it might as well have been part of the lining, was a second letter. No envelope this time. Just folded, once, then again. Handwritten. Same slanted scrawl. Same name. My ex-husband's signature stared up at me like a ghost. Michael. It was dated 3 days before his death. Margaret, if you're reading this, I guess the first letter reached you. I don't know if you opened it. I hope you did. I won't waste time apologizing again. I need to tell you something more. Something I couldn't carry with me. Something I should have said a long time ago. Daniel wasn't just someone else's son. He was never supposed to be yours at all. When Emily left him at my door, she didn't want to keep him. She was 18, terrified. She asked me to give him up for adoption. I couldn't. I didn't have the heart. I lied to you. I told you he was ours, that it was a mistake from before we got married. You believed me. You raised him. You loved him like he was flesh of your flesh. But the truth is, he wasn't even that. He was a stranger's child. And you made him your world anyway. I don't know how you'll feel reading this, but I hope, God, I hope, you know that whatever else I did wrong, I was right about choosing you. You were the only person strong enough to be his mother, not because of blood, but because of who you are. I didn't move. The words sat on my chest like a boulder, not biologically mine, not even accidentally mine, chosen by a man who abandoned both of us, who gave me a child and then walked away like it was a favor. My breath caught. For the first time in days, my knees went weak. I sat down on the edge of the bed, paper still in my hand. 1,000 images flashed in my mind. The first time I rocked Daniel to sleep, his tiny fists curled against my shoulder. His first word, truck. The fever that scared me so badly, I drove to the ER barefoot in winter. The science fair project he stayed up crying over when the volcano wouldn't erupt. His first real heartbreak. His laugh when he found out he'd gotten into college. Every moment I thought was ours. I had built my life around this boy. I had shaped my identity around being his mother. And now I had to accept something no woman should ever have to. He never truly saw me that way. He loved what I gave, not who I was. Not really. If he had, he never would have let her put me in that kitchen. He never would have stayed silent. He never would have let them erase me. I placed the letter on the bed, smoothed it out with my palm. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like freedom. For 62 years, I had lived a version of myself that only existed in service to others. Wife, mother, provider, ghost. But now, with that truth staring up at me in ink faded with age, I saw something new. I had power I didn't even realize, because I loved someone completely who never belonged to me, and I never let that stop me. Because I chose to stay when others ran. Because I made a family, even when it wasn't written in blood, and I could choose again, starting now. I left the letter open on the kitchen table, didn't hide it, didn't lock it away, just let it sit there, plain and visible, like a truth I no longer needed to shield from myself. I moved through the house like I was seeing it for the first time. The beige walls, the faded photos of Daniel's high school graduation, the dent in the doorframe from when he crashed his bike trying to ride inside. I used to smile at that dent. Now I just stared at it. That house was a museum of sacrifices. Of all the ways I'd erased myself to keep him whole. The faded armchair I nursed him in. The sewing kit I used to hem his pants. The pantry still full of his favorite cereal, Honey Bunches of Oats, even though I stopped liking it years ago. It hit me all at once. I didn't know what my favorite cereal was. I didn't know the last book I'd read that wasn't a parenting guide or something from the hospital's required reading list. I didn't remember the last time I spent money on something just for me. I had lived so long being his mother, I'd forgotten how to be a woman. A person. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch. The silence in the house had changed. It didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. My phone buzzed on the side table. Daniel again. A long message this time, a different tone. I don't know what happened. I've been thinking about everything. Emily said she didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry if you felt excluded. If I felt, not because you excluded me, not because you left me behind. If I felt, it was still about his perception, his comfort, his distance from blame. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The hum of a cooking show filled the room. Calm, steady. My eyes drifted to the letter again. He wasn't mine. Not biologically, not legally, but I had been his. Until he made it clear I was no longer part of the family he was building. The ache inside me wasn't for him anymore. It was for the version of myself I had abandoned to raise someone who never once turned around to ask, "Are you okay, Mom?" All those years, all those birthdays I made special, all those Christmas mornings I stayed up past midnight wrapping dollar store gifts in perfect bows, all those, "You go sit, I'll do the dishes," kind of days I never had because no one ever offered. I had been his background music, his safety net, his reliable silence, but no more. That evening, I took every framed photo of us off the wall, not out of anger, not out of spite, because it was time to stop living in a shrine to a version of motherhood that demanded I disappear. I boxed them gently, wrapped the glass in old towels, labeled the box, memories, not obligations. I cooked dinner, just for me, a recipe I saw once on a travel show, lemon butter pasta with roasted cherry tomatoes and garlic. No chicken nuggets, no side of mac and cheese, just what I wanted. I lit a candle while I ate, played soft jazz, set the table for one. It was quiet, but not empty. It was the sound of reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost, myself. The invitation list started with silence. No glitter pens, no gold foil, just a lined yellow notepad and the sound of my pen scratching across it. I wrote the names one by one, not people I had to invite. People I wanted to. Claire, my old friend from the ER who used to sneak coffee into my locker when I worked doubles. Mr. Henderson, my next-door neighbor who always snowblowed my driveway before I could get out there. Dina, from the bookstore I visit every Sunday, who always asks about my week and actually listens. Nurse Janet, who once stayed late on her own birthday to help me cover a shift. No one shared my blood, but every single one had made me feel seen in a way my own son never had. And that was the new theme, people who saw me. It wasn't a wedding, wasn't a holiday, just a dinner, at my house, with my food, at my table, no folding chairs, no back kitchens. I spent the next few days getting everything ready, not because I had to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I wasn't preparing something for someone else's story. This wasn't about Daniel. It wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about making space for joy. For me. I went to the market and picked out the ingredients myself. Fresh basil, garlic, heirloom tomatoes, not a single frozen appetizer tray in sight. I even bought a new tablecloth, blue with sunflowers. It reminded me of something I would have liked when I was 20, before all the shoulds started stacking up like bricks around my life. On the morning of the dinner, I woke up early and played music while I cooked. Van Morrison, Stevie Nicks, Norah Jones. My house smelled like garlic and olive oil and lemon zest, like warmth, like effort, like home. The first guest arrived just before 6. Claire, with a bottle of red and a huge smile. "You look amazing, Maggie." I did. Hair soft, gray at the temples, but loose and confident. A linen blouse that made my skin feel cool. No Spanx, no mascara tears waiting to happen. Just me. They trickled in after that. 6 guests. Laughter at the door. Hugs that lasted longer than they needed to. Wine being poured without asking permission. We ate at the table I once used for folding laundry and helping Daniel with math homework. Now it was full of passing plates, clinking forks, napkins being dabbed to mouths mid-laughter. I laughed too, really laughed. Someone brought up bad first dates. Someone else admitted to stealing a pen from the bank every week out of spite. And somewhere between dessert and seconds, it hit me. This was family, not assigned by blood, but chosen, intentionally, authentically. I didn't feel forgotten. I didn't feel managed. I didn't feel small. I felt present. Toward the end of the evening, as we sat under the string lights I'd strung across the back porch, Claire raised a glass. "To Margaret," she said, "for being the kind of woman who reminds us that it's never too late to take your seat at the head of your own table." Everyone clinked glasses. I laughed softly, and I meant every word when I raised my glass and said, "To finally being seen." The knock came just after noon. Not loud, not urgent, but steady, like he knew I was home and wasn't going to leave until I opened the door. I stood in the hallway, barefoot, watching his silhouette through the frosted glass. Daniel. It had been a week since the wedding. 7 days of silence from me. 7 days of unraveling for him. I opened the door slowly. He looked the same, but not really. The suit was gone. So was the glow. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles under his eyes. His mouth tightened when he saw me, like he'd rehearsed 10 different ways to start this conversation and forgot them all at once. "Hi, Mom." I didn't say it back. I stepped aside, let him in. He hesitated, then walked past me. The house was clean, quiet. Sunlight streamed across the living room floor. On the mantel, the photos were gone, every last one of him. He noticed. His eyes flicked to the empty spaces. "Where are the pictures?" I ignored the question. "Sit down," I said. Calm, flat. He obeyed, sinking into the armchair across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't come here to fight." I nodded. "Good. He shook his head. "I don't understand what happened. 1 minute everything was fine, and the next, you're canceling things, posting checks on Facebook." That stung. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He wanted an explanation. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a box, set it down gently on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every one of them, from the last 12 months. Venue deposits, dress fittings, caterer down payments. I even covered the extra dance floor you wanted. Remember that?" His eyes scanned the papers, but didn't touch them. Then I pulled out the next item, the letter, his father's handwriting, unmistakable. I didn't speak while he read. I watched his face. At first, confusion, then recognition, then the slow, creeping shade of disbelief. He looked up. His voice cracked. "You knew?" "I do now," I said. He swallowed hard. "So you're angry because I'm not angry because you're not my biological son," I said, cutting him off. "I'm angry because I raised you, Daniel. I gave you everything I had. And when the moment came for you to honor me, to stand up and say, 'This woman made me,' you sat down." He looked down. "Silent. You let them push me into the kitchen," I continued. My voice didn't shake. "You watched them humiliate me, and you said nothing. That's what broke me. Not your DNA. Not the money." He finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would matter," Emily said. "She said it would be better for the pictures, for the look. I didn't think you'd be hurt." I laughed, cold, brief. "You didn't think." "Exactly." I stood, walked over to the mantel, held up one of the empty frames. "This used to hold a photo of your kindergarten graduation. You had a missing tooth and marker on your shirt. You ran off the stage, straight into my arms." I placed it face down. "I'm done holding on to versions of you that no longer exist." He flinched like I'd hit him. "Mom." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not your backdrop anymore. I'm not your bank. I'm not your afterthought." He looked at the floor, his jaw clenched. He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Too little. Too late." I picked up the box, closed the lid, handed it to him. "These are yours now. Take them. Every receipt, every record, every reminder of what you chose to overlook." He hesitated, then took the box, and I walked him to the door. He paused at the threshold, looked back at me like he was searching for a crack, a softness, a sign that the door might open again later, but it wouldn't. You always said I was your whole world, he said quietly. You were, I replied, and now I'm finally mine. Then I closed the door. The house was warm with laughter, real laughter, the kind that fills your chest and makes your eyes crinkle without you even noticing, the kind that echoes through the walls and reminds you you're alive. The smell of garlic and rosemary danced through the air. The table was set with care, blue and sunflower yellow cloth, mismatched plates, cloth napkins folded into little fans. I had placed a candle in the center, not to impress anyone, just because I liked the way the flame made the silverware shine. My guests were gathered in the living room, sipping wine, sharing stories. Mr. Henderson was in the corner, telling a story about how he once locked himself out of his house in his underwear. Everyone was howling. Claire had tears in her eyes from laughing so hard. And me? I was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a glass of wine, smiling, not waiting to be called in, not hidden behind a door, not forgotten. I was hostess. I was present. I was seen. I plated the last dish, roasted vegetables with thyme and sea salt, and brought it out. As I set it on the table, someone clapped. Chef Margaret strikes again, Claire said with a grin. We sat, passed the bowls, poured more wine. Somewhere between the second helping and the last bite of cornbread, Claire raised her glass again. I think we should toast, she said. Everyone nodded. To what? Dina asked. Claire turned to me. To choosing yourself, she said, and to knowing when to stop giving to people who only know how to take. Everyone raised their glass, and I, finally, fully, raised mine too. I stood up. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't tremble. I looked at every face around that table, people who weren't bound to me by obligation or blood, but by choice, by love, by respect. And I said, to the mothers who stayed quiet for too long, to the women who gave everything and were told it still wasn't enough, to the ones who were asked to sit in the kitchen after building the damn house. This is for us. May we never sit down again unless it's at the head of our own table. Glasses clinked. Someone cheered. And I sat down, not in the back, not out of sight, not in exile, but in my chair, my place. Daniel never called again. I didn't need him to. The people who matter were already here. The next morning I woke up to birdsong and light pouring through my window. No regrets, no tightness in my chest. Just peace. I made coffee, sat on the porch with my robe fluttering gently in the breeze. I looked out at my garden, roses blooming wild and bright. I wasn't someone's backdrop anymore. I was the main character in my own life. And finally, that was enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.